If you're an Eagles fan like us, you know the off-season drama never really ends. And right now, we're in the thick of it. The latest news has the Cowboys blocking Clayton Adams from interviewing with the Eagles. And honestly, that move has left a lot of people scratching their heads. It feels like the rivalry between these teams just keeps spilling over into every decision. And it raises the question, what is Philadelphia really trying to do with this offensive coordinator search? Because at this point, it seems like we're chasing our own tail. Before we even get into that, we have to acknowledge what's happening in the NFL right now. The Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots are in the Super Bowl, and that's something we can't ignore. It's especially interesting when you think about what these two teams represent in terms of what the Eagles could learn, for starters. The Seahawks are a perfect example of letting the quarterback play. Sam Darnold came into the playoffs with the most turnovers among quarterbacks, with 25 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. That's not exactly a clean stat line, but what the Seahawks did was let him play his game, let him take chances, and let him throw the ball with confidence. That's something we didn't do often enough last season. We fell into this mindset of avoiding turnovers at all costs, and in the process, we stopped taking the kind of risks that made our offense dangerous. When you have playmakers like Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, you have to be willing to throw the ball up and let them make plays. Sometimes that's a 70-30 chance, sometimes it's a 50-50. But you can't stop playing aggressive football. Just because the stats might look cleaner, the Eagles got too conservative. And it showed. Even Jalen Hurts said it after the Rams game, calling out the team for being too cautious. That was a rare moment of raw honesty. And it was uncharacteristic, but it was also the truth. The thing is, the Eagles did show what they're capable of in the second half of that season. The first half of the game felt like we were trying not to lose instead of trying to win. That's not how championship teams play. When you watch the second half, you saw the real Eagles, aggressive, physical, and confident. You saw players stepping up and making plays when it mattered. That's the kind of football that wins big games. The problem is, it didn't always happen consistently, and that inconsistency is what cost us. It's something that has to be fixed. You could see it in the way the offense was managed. The Eagles had a habit of playing to save, and it felt like the play calling was designed to avoid mistakes rather than create opportunities. The moment the team started playing aggressively again, you could feel the difference. You could feel the energy. You could feel the belief. And that's why it's so frustrating to see the same pattern repeating itself. If the Eagles want to compete at the highest level, they need to embrace the risk. They need to trust their quarterback and their playmakers. They need to let the game breathe and let the offense attack. The Patriots, on the other hand, represent something else entirely. They remind us that wins matter, but not always in the way fans think. The Patriots took a risk, and it paid off. It's easy to look at Bill Belichick's legacy and assume that the team was built solely around him. But the truth is that the Patriots realized they needed a change. They went through a transition period, made tough decisions, and eventually found a coach who could rebuild the team and bring them back to the Super Bowl. That's not a story about one man. It's a story about adaptability, willingness to take risks, and understanding that sometimes you have to make a move that feels uncomfortable in order to move forward. That brings us back to the Eagles. People will argue about this, but the reality is that the Eagles might need to take a similar leap. Nick Sirianni has had a talented roster, and he's achieved a lot with the team. But the bigger question is whether he's the right person to lead this team into the next stage. There's no denying that the roster is stacked with talent. The Eagles have one of the best collections of players in the league. And that's not something to overlook, but the coaching philosophy, the play calling, and the overall direction of the offense are all areas that have been questioned. If the Eagles were to consider a change at head coach, it wouldn't be the end of the world. In fact, it could be exactly what the team needs. If the roster stays intact and the team brings in a proven leader, someone with a strong vision and the ability to push the offense to its full potential, the Eagles could be even more dangerous. The key is whether the organization is willing to take that risk. Are they willing to admit that the current approach has limits and that they might need a new direction? That's the real question. And now we get to the offensive coordinator situation. The Eagles have been searching for a new play caller since Kevin Patullo stepped away from the role, and the list of candidates has been narrowing. But what's frustrating is the uncertainty. The longer the team waits, the more other teams scoop up the best candidates. The pressure is mounting. And fans are starting to feel like the Eagles are dragging their feet. The fact that the Cowboys blocked Clayton Adams from interviewing adds another layer of confusion. Why would Philadelphia even pursue a division rival's offensive coordinator for a lateral move? It doesn't make sense. It's a move that seems more about chasing headlines than making a strategic decision. When you look at the situation logically, you can see why the Cowboys would block it. They're not going to allow a rival team to poach their staff, especially for a role that doesn't represent a promotion. The Eagles could have avoided this mess by focusing on candidates who were actually looking for a step up. That's how you get guys like Christian Parker, who was promoted to defensive coordinator. That's the kind of move you can't block. But a lateral shift to the Eagles, that's something the Cowboys were never going to allow. So now the Eagles are left with a smaller list of candidates, and the pressure is on to make a decision. There are veteran options still in the mix, names like Jim Bob Cooter, Brian Daboll, and Matt Nagy. Each of these coaches brings something different to the table, and each one has a unique approach to offense. Then there's the question of whether the Eagles go young and innovative or experienced and established. It's a decision that could define the team's future. The longer the team waits, the more the window closes at this point. It feels like the Eagles need to stop hesitating. The team needs to choose a direction and commit to it if they want to be aggressive. They need a coordinator who will let the quarterback play and the offense attack if they want to be more traditional. They need someone who can manage the game and maximize what the roster already has. Either way, the clock is ticking, and the Eagles need to make a move before the best candidates are gone. But the bigger issue remains. The Eagles need a coordinator who can bring clarity to the offense. They need someone who can establish a consistent identity and give the team a sense of purpose. Without that, the team risks falling back into the same patterns that held them back last season. The Eagles have the talent, but talent alone is not enough. They need leadership, vision, and a willingness to take calculated risks. Now that we've covered the big picture, let's get into the heart of what's really going on with the Eagles and the offensive coordinator search. The reality is that this isn't just about finding someone who can call plays. It's about finding a voice that can take this offense to a new level. Someone who can bring the kind of energy and creativity that makes defenses worry right now. The Eagles have a roster that should be dominating games, and the biggest question is whether the coaching staff can unlock that potential consistently. One thing that's been clear is that the Eagles have struggled with identity. Sometimes they look like a team that wants to run the ball and control the clock, and other times they act like they're trying to be a modern, pass-heavy offense. The problem is that the play calling has often felt reactive rather than proactive. It feels like the team is trying to avoid mistakes instead of trying to make big plays. When you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts and playmakers like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, you have to be willing to attack. You have to be willing to take shots down the field and let the game open up. The Seahawks showed that kind of confidence with Sam Darnold, even though he had a lot of turnovers. They trusted him to throw and let the offense operate. The result was a team that looked alive and unpredictable. That kind of style can be risky, but it also makes the difference between being good and being great. The Eagles have the same kind of talent, but they have to be willing to let it fly. The offense needs to have a consistent philosophy and a coordinator who is not afraid to take risks. That's what makes a championship-level offense. Now, let's talk about the bigger coaching picture. There's been a lot of talk about whether Nick Sirianni is the right head coach for this team moving forward, and honestly, it's a conversation that makes sense because the Eagles have had success, but they haven't been able to get over the hump. You can't ignore that. Winning games is one thing, but winning championships is another. The Patriots showed that by making tough decisions and changing direction when needed. The Eagles might be at a similar crossroads. The team has had one of the most talented rosters in the league, and yet the offense has often looked inconsistent. That's not just on the offensive coordinator. It's on the whole system. The coaching staff needs to be able to put the players in positions to succeed, and then trust them to make plays. The Eagles have had moments where they look unstoppable, and then they have stretches where they look overly cautious. That's a sign of a team that hasn't fully committed to a clear identity. The question is whether the Eagles are willing to take a risk and make a bold move. If they want to reach the next level, they need to think about what the Patriots did. The Patriots took a risk by changing direction and trusting a new leader to rebuild the team. That kind of decision is not easy, and it can be unpopular, but if it results in long-term success, it's worth it. The Eagles have to decide whether they want to play it safe or take a chance on a new direction. Now, let's return to the offensive coordinator search and the candidates that are still on the table. The list is getting smaller, and the Eagles have to make a choice soon. Some of the names that have been mentioned are familiar to Eagles fans, like Matt Nagy, who started his coaching career in Philadelphia. There are also veteran play callers like Brian Daboll and Jim Bob Cooter, who have experience and a track record. The question is whether the Eagles want someone who is innovative and aggressive, or someone who is steady and reliable. Both approaches have pros and cons, but the team needs to make a decision soon before other teams start locking up the top options. The reality is that the longer the Eagles wait, the more they risk losing the best candidates, and if nobody wants to come to Philadelphia, that's a problem too. The Eagles are a franchise with a passionate fan base and a strong roster, but the pressure and expectations can be intense. Some coaches might be hesitant to take on that challenge. But if the Eagles can find the right leader, the reward could be huge. It's also worth noting that the Eagles have been looking at candidates from teams that are currently in the Super Bowl, like the Seahawks and the Patriots. That's an interesting strategy because it suggests the Eagles want to bring in someone who has been part of a winning culture. But it also means that those candidates may be harder to get, especially if they are on teams that are still competing at the highest level. The Eagles have to be strategic and decisive as the search continues. One thing is clear, the Eagles need a coordinator who can bring clarity, consistency, and confidence to the offense. They need someone who will let the quarterback play and who will design an offense that fits the talent. The offense needs to be aggressive and dynamic, not conservative and predictable. If the Eagles want to compete for a championship, they have to be willing to take risks and trust their players. At the end of the day, the Eagles have a decision to make. They can continue to play it safe and hope that the current approach eventually works, or they can make a bold move and bring in a new voice that can elevate the team. The clock is ticking, and the fans are watching. The Eagles have the pieces, but now they need the plan. The next move will define the direction of the franchise, and it's up to the organization to decide whether they want to stay where they are or push forward into a new era. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest updates on our Philadelphia Eagles. And don't be shy, share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The city is buzzing with whispers that refuse to fade, and the latest name echoing through the corridors of the league is Marcus Williams. According to growing speculation, the Eagles may be on the verge of landing one of the most respected stars in football, a move that has fans dreaming big and rivals quietly taking notice. While nothing has been officially confirmed, the mere possibility of Williams wearing green has already set off a wave of excitement across Philadelphia. Sources close to the situation suggest that internal conversations have intensified, fueled by the Eagles' desire to elevate an already ambitious roster. Marcus Williams is widely viewed as the kind of player who changes the temperature of a locker room instantly, known for his football intelligence, leadership presence, and knack for being in the right place at the right time. He represents more than just talent. He represents stability and belief. That is precisely what has Eagles fans celebrating the rumor as if it were already reality. Around the league, executives are said to be monitoring the situation carefully. The idea of Williams joining the Eagles has sparked debates about how such a move could reshape the balance of power within the conference. Analysts speculate that his arrival would not only strengthen the defense, but also send a clear message about the franchise's intentions. This would be a statement move, signaling that the Eagles are willing to invest heavily in proven stars rather than settling for incremental progress. Inside the fan base, optimism is running high. Jerseys are being imagined, highlight plays replayed, and social media is filled with confident declarations that something big is coming. Even skeptics admit that the rumor feels different, carrying a weight that suggests more than idle talk. Whether it is strategic silence or simple coincidence, the Eagles camp has remained quiet, allowing speculation to grow louder by the hour. For now, it remains a rumor, but one that has already achieved something rare. It has united an entire city in anticipation. If Marcus Williams does arrive, the celebrations will be justified. Until then, Eagles fans continue to wait, convinced that a star may soon be touching down. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Philadelphia Eagles, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.